It had been one of those long, exhausting days that left me both drained and restless at the same time. The kind where the clock seemed to drag, but when I finally looked back, I wondered where the hours had gone. The summer storm outside had been brewing since morning, and by the time evening arrived, thunder had rolled in with such authority it rattled the windows of our small suburban home. My son Ethan, 14 and taller by the month it seemed, had been in his room most of the day. Like many teenagers, he had headphones on and a screen lighting up his face more than sunlight ever did. I had reminded him at least twice to put away his laundry and empty the dishwasher, but it wasn't until the sky cracked open and rain slammed against the house that he finally wandered downstairs, restless like me. I was in the kitchen, trying to prepare a late dinner, even though the storm made me want to abandon everything and crawl under a blanket. The chopping board was lined with vegetables, the oven warming, and the rhythmic sound of rain pattering on the roof became background music to my thoughts. Ethan came into the kitchen just as another rumble shook the house. He tried to appear casual, leaning on the counter with a faint smirk, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. I had seen that look since he was small, pretending to be braver than he felt. "Storm's pretty loud," he said. "Yeah," I answered, slicing into a bell pepper. "But we're safe inside." The lights flickered once, then again. I froze, knife halfway through a slice, and before I could comment, the entire house plunged into darkness. It wasn't a dim fade-out. It was instant, smothering, absolute blackness. The oven clicked off. The hum of the refrigerator silenced. Even the distant streetlights went dark. For a second, I could hear nothing but the storm, thunder growling, wind rattling the windows, rain pounding against the siding like fists. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was sharper than usual, betraying a hint of fear. "I'm right here," I said, reaching my hand out into the void. He bumped into me in the darkness faster than I expected. His arm brushed against mine, then his shoulder pressed close. It startled me, but in that pitch black, with the storm raging outside, I understood. The kitchen, once familiar, suddenly felt strange and unsafe without sight. I felt his hand graze mine as he steadied himself, and then he stayed there, right beside me. "Do you have a flashlight?" he asked. "In the drawer by the fridge," I replied. But fumbling across the counters in darkness was easier said than done. We shuffled side by side, moving carefully, his taller frame bumping into me as he reached out for orientation. At one point he stepped too close and I nearly lost my balance. My hand instinctively found his arm to steady myself, and for a brief second, he gripped my hand back, almost like he used to when he was small and scared of the dark. It hit me then that no matter how old he grew, no matter how independent he acted, there was still a part of him that looked for comfort when the world suddenly went dark. "I can't see anything," he muttered, frustration mixing with unease. "Hold on," I said softly. "We'll find it together." We shuffled toward the drawer, and every time the sky outside lit up with lightning, the kitchen flashed in a ghostly white. The sudden glimpses of his face, serious and tense, reminded me that he wasn't a little boy anymore. Yet here he was, standing so close in the storm, leaning toward me for reassurance. Finally, after what felt like forever, my hand brushed against the familiar drawer handle. I tugged it open and rummaged until my fingers closed around the cool metal of the flashlight. I clicked it on, and the beam cut through the darkness like a sword. Ethan exhaled in relief. Finally, I lifted the flashlight, shining it around the room, revealing our familiar kitchen transformed into something unfamiliar and eerie. Shadows stretched across the walls, every movement magnified by the flickering beam. He stayed beside me as I set the flashlight on the counter, so we had both hands free. "Power will probably be out for a while," I said, trying to sound calm. He nodded, then reached for a candle on the shelf. Together, we lit it, and soon the room glowed with warm flickers, making everything feel just a little less frightening. As the storm continued, we decided to wait it out in the kitchen. I pulled 2 chairs close to the counter, and Ethan sat beside me. We didn't speak much at first, just listened to the rain and occasional cracks of thunder. "Remember when I used to get scared of storms?" he finally said. I smiled faintly. You mean last year? He laughed, embarrassed. Okay, maybe not that long ago. Everyone gets scared sometimes, I said gently. He nodded, his eyes on the candle flame. The closeness we shared in that moment felt fragile, like something unspoken yet deeply understood. He didn't move far away, and I didn't tell him to. We spent nearly an hour like that, sharing stories, listening, and waiting. The storm raged on, but the fear seemed less sharp with each passing minute. By the time the power flickered back on, flooding the kitchen with light again, Ethan leaned back in his chair with a sigh. Well, he said, grinning, that wasn't so bad. I looked at him, taller now, older, yet still my boy, and I realized how moments like these stitched themselves quietly into the fabric of our lives. We didn't need to say much more. The storm had given us a memory, and the darkness had reminded us of the light we carried within our family bond. And that night, as I cleaned up the kitchen, I knew I'd never forget how my son had come close to me in the darkness, not out of fear alone, but because sometimes family is the only light you need when the world outside feels overwhelming.